This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and we have covered the struggles in SEIU for democracy, against racism, and also the fight against privatization. And joining us today is Peter Quiroz. He is a steward in the SEIU 521 in Palo Alto, and he works in the utility department of Palo Alto. Welcome to our show, Peter.
My name's Peter Quiroz. I work for the city of Palo Alto. I'm a gas measurement and control technician. I've been there since 2011. And from the moment I got there, the veteran utility workers have always expressed that we were never truly represented by SEIU. SEIU is not your typical union to represent utility workers, so there's right away a misconnection between the workers and the union. But every time we try to express ourselves, they would actually turn the whole chapter against us, trying to label us as selfish or entitled instead of trying to grow with us. And the reason I feel they do this is because they just want to contain the chapter. They don't want to grow. They don't want to put in extra work. They want to contain while still collecting the dues that they normally get without putting out much more work. And so, go ahead.
The issues that you had concerning health and safety and these kind of conditions that like PG&E workers have who are utility workers as well. I mean, these kind of issues are life and death for utility workers. Why don't you talk about some of the serious concerns you had as workers, as utility workers, that needed to be addressed and weren't being addressed?
Yeah, so in 2019, an electric lineman actually passed away on the job. He was a new hire. He was just hired within weeks, and he was out working on overtime, and there were some issues, and he passed away on the work site. Now, when it comes to lineman training or apprenticeship training, the union, which is IBEW, they're heavily involved in the training process. They're involved in the oversight. They're making sure steps along with management and the city and the employer are being met. And if they're not being met, they work together to figure it out how to get this employee fully trained to produce the best possible work for the people. We don't get that in Palo Alto. We do have 3 positions that have apprenticeships, but once it's signed off in the contract, they just kind of let the city take over. And at that point, we're left to the discretion of management with no representation, no knowledge-based union rep to help the process along in a fair way. And so when dealing with gas and electric, when electric goes wrong and something happens, typically the utility worker is the one that gets hurt or passes. But with gas, it's usually something that's left behind that leaves the resident in a dangerous predicament. And these are situations we absolutely cannot have, so it should never be ignored. It's safety.
And when you brought it up with your local leadership or your local reps, what did they tell you?
They tell me to give it time. They say, oh, give it time. We could create a side letter. We could create custom language to help you guys, but we've given it 20 plus years and they still haven't made an effort to try to learn our job. And not only that, when we go to the bargaining table, we're with 12 other members at the negotiating table, all having their own concerns that they want addressed. And so it becomes a matter of a vote at that point. And if the utilities are drowned out with votes, it doesn't go through.
And so you tried to have your own unit in SEIU 521?
Well, over the years, I would say over the last 15 years, there's been a few attempts to decertify SEIU. And at that point, we would have taken the entire chapter and basically voted as a chapter, but it never fully went all the way. We backed out and it never was pushed all the way through its channels. But this time, we do not want to decertify them. We want them to grow with us and give us our own contract branching away from the rest of the chapter so we could discuss our needs and our safety issues and the lack of tools to address these high hazardous jobs. So we're trying to stay with SEIU, but just a separate branch, and they don't want no part of that.
And what is the reason they tell you you can't have a separate unit in that local in 521?
They don't tell us we can't. They tell us we shouldn't because it makes everyone else weaker. And I don't agree with that because one, as it is now, the city has such a challenge attracting and retaining utility workers. The union is threatening that, oh, once the city has us on our own, they're going to give us less during negotiations. But the city doesn't want less workers, it wants to bring in the best. And so I just don't see that argument of us being weaker because the city's going to take full advantage of us is a legitimate argument. The fact that we need to attract and retain the best, and now that we have a focused contract to pursue the right language, it's going to open the door for us to get better.
And of course, SEIU and 1021 and other locals have separate units for the nurses. Why do they give them separate units? And yet it seems like they're giving you a hard time having your own unit.
You know, from what I heard after talking to many people that I'm meeting now, is if you're pro SEIU and you're pro their agenda, they give you a little more effort, they give you more attention. And for some reason, the utility workers in Palo Alto and SEIU just don't click. And it's not because we're standoffish against them. I think it's just because they're not willing to try to learn who we are. And at that point, along with them being very overworked and not enough workers to go around by design, we just don't see eye to eye. So they tend to forget about us often.
What do you mean by design?
So from what we gathered, when I got hired in 2011, I became involved with the union right away. And we would have a worksite organizer, and it wasn't great back then, but it was definitely better than now, who paid attention a little more to the chapter. It got a little more personal. They've grown with us over the years and understood our problems. But it seems like after 2020, COVID took place, they shifted gears from having that personal relationship to limiting their worksite organizers to spread them out over 4 to 5 chapters instead of one. And then they created a call center to funnel in all the complaints. But we all know call centers, it's so many layers just to get through to someone who doesn't really seem to care. Not alone focusing on 5 to 6 other contracts, it's just almost a process of frustration where the employee just stops and lets it go, but they're still collecting the dues.
And it sounds like the corporatization of the union. Go to the call center. You don't have a union rep to call. It's kind
Exactly.
of, is that business unionism? I mean, what is that? You know?
If it's not business unionism, I don't know what is because it feels like a business now. It doesn't feel like someone that wants to represent us and is passionate for standing up for people's rights. It's a business of how to bring in more money and ultimately, from what we see, it's pushing a political agenda.
And you recently discovered there are other people in the local that also have concerns about democracy and representation.
Yeah, so from just doing some research, I found out that there's some people down south in the Kern County area, Bakersfield, Fresno area, that are going through almost identical situations of being ignored, no help, silent responses, and it's because these people are growing and identifying some problems from within that they feel should be addressed and they're legitimate problems, but the union does not want to acknowledge it. So then they turn their backs on them.
And have you talked to the top leader, the president of the union or the executive director of the union?
I've been emailing Rico Mendez, I think that's his last name, since March. And I probably emailed him a total of 15 to 20 times, and he's probably responded twice. And one was probably written by their communications department. So he probably replied once on a personal response that just said, "We'll look into it." And that was about it, nothing else.
And what would it take for you to have your own unit in SEIU 521?
It wouldn't take much because we've already organized out of 100 workers, we've had basically all 100 workers buy into it. We've been wanting it for years. we're pretty much self-governing right now. We have our own stewards and we understand our department. All it would take is for the union to sign off on it, to fully embrace it, and to come up with the contract. And I believe we could be the blueprint for the rest of the chapter to grow and how to become specialized and tailored. Like potty training a baby, it takes a little bit of work at times, but once they learn and once it clicks, it becomes easier. And I just don't think SEIU is willing to go through that process.
And what are you going to do? How are you going to organize to get this done?
Well, we're waiting for a meeting. And after being ignored for 2 to 3 months, 90% of our utility field workers have withdrawn membership. So out of 560 members, we only had about 66% full membership. That's roughly 360 people. So within the last few months, 90 more people withdrew membership. So they're, as a whole, they're less than 50% membership in the city of Palo Alto. And that really scares them because if this ever were to lead to a decertification, they don't have the numbers. But we are standing in protest exactly the way they stand in protest when they don't like something, when they feel something's unjust. And that's what we're doing. And we're not demanding anything crazy. We just want our voices heard and our rights pursued through the very same union that we're with.
And what can members do in your local who want to support you, your right to have democratic self-governance and have your own unit?
So even outside of this utility group, there's others in public works, customer service, engineering that recognize the union's downfall and their lack of effort. They've also withdrawn their membership to stand in support. Um, I'm not asking them to do that, but just voicing out what we've experienced. These are real life experiences that we've had over the last 10 to 15 years. And I don't think anything else speaks louder than that. This is real life. It's not something from a book. And I just wish the union would give ear to that and make a little effort.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us on Work Week and supporting your struggle for democracy, democratic rights, and membership control. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.